This is to make something perfectly clear. Regardless of whether a person is educated or not educated, whether they were raised in the ghetto or basically raised on a farm and they're not very educated and they don't talk educated compared to the ones that were fortunate enough to grow up in the suburbs and they were able to speak educated. No one has the right to say, I'm better than you. However, there's some very important facts that needs to be addressed. Hello, everyone. Once again, this is Dare to Speak. I need to basically make a very good point on this. And I'm not trying to sound racist towards blacks or even towards Hispanics, my own race. But there seems to be a great deal of tension between educated people, black or Hispanic, and also there's like a big tension between people that are educated and the ones that are not educated. They come from different backgrounds and things like that. But the thing is, the point that needs to be addressed is how people just banter and they just criticize and they try to gain the moral high ground by saying, you think you're better than me because you got an education. You're a sellout. You don't care about where you came from and this and that. And they just look at these people that are educated with contempt. And I've noticed that a little bit with black people when I was growing up, but I mostly noticed that from Hispanics. I would actually, sorry, my lips are pretty dry. But I would also notice that with I guess I would say, I don't want to say names as far as my relatives or anything like that, but people that I know are actually like that too. They say, oh, this guy thinks he's better than me, or this fucking sellout bitch thinks she's better than me just because she went to college, just because she talks white. Whatever. And it has nothing to do with that shit. I hate it when fucking people say that shit. They call them whitewashed, or they're acting white. No, they're acting educated, not white. And of course, it's also wrong if a whitewashed, so-called whitewashed, but an educated person, black or Hispanic, were to look down on people that are ghetto or people that are country bumpkins. And they use a lot of ebonics or slang. They're uneducated and stuff like that, and they start laughing and criticizing them, saying that they're dumb, they're lowlifes, they're a bunch of criminals, and a lot of them are. That's the thing. Most of the, like I would say, about 90% of blacks and Hispanics that are uneducated are usually in prison, and of course, It's not their fault that they became that way to begin with. I mean, it's the way they grew up. I mean, that's how they talk and things like that. And I understand that. I mean, it's not their fault. But the thing is, what I also noticed was, even when I was growing up, a lot of them didn't want to make the effort in becoming a little bit more educated. Some were just lazy, and they were just too proud of their ghetto type of or country bumpkin type of attitudes. Not all of them, just a small amount. But there was a fair size amount of people who didn't want to because they had the opportunity. They went to school and stuff like that, and they also had parents that were like that as well, and they would talk with with that type of slang or whatever, or not slang, but the kind of the country type of uneducated type of mannerisms, not mannerisms, but that speech, the way they talk. And they feel that they don't want to do that because they would feel like an Uncle Tom, a sellout, a traitor. If they were to talk educated, especially when you need to, they're gonna feel like an Uncle Tom. They're gonna feel like what they use a term like for black people. And even though I don't really hear this very often or hardly ever, I don't think, but they call them a house nigger, meaning you're being an Uncle Tom, a sellout, or like how Malcolm X would call Martin Luther King at one point a long time ago, before he changed his way of thinking. He would call him a house nigger and that kind of thing, and that's very, very cruel to even use that term, especially towards a man who was a very brilliant civil rights leader. Now, this is just one example that I wanted to show you, because I know that it's wrong for either one to actually look at each other with contempt. The educated looks upon the country bumpkin, uneducated people with contempt, seeing them as trash or whatever like that, and it's also wrong the other way around. And this is just one example of how some people will look upon another one with contempt.
She made that pudding all by herself.
It's very nice. With a damn hopping John.
Albert, you know that's not proper food for a guest. Now let's allow Samuel to finish.
Lord, we come together.
Well, maybe our guest with a lights on.
Well, I have always enjoyed that type of food, sir.
What type of food?
Well, my grandma would make it.
I said something funny, son.
Beg pardon?
You laughing? What's the joke?
Hoppin' John's, Albert. You're being ridiculous.
I've been eating rice and beans all my life. Tell me it ain't good enough.
You'll have to forgive my husband's country ways.
I completely understand that.
It's my house. And my country ways put the food on this goddamn table.
Albert! You're drunk.
Sir, I apologize. I'll leave.
You stay right where you are, son. Right there. Inside the house. Pretty clear who the real nigga is.
that is an example of how unsavory someone could act towards people that are educated. I mean, there was no need for that. Now, just to let you know, that's from Boardwalk Empire, and I saw all the seasons, and to me, I loved it. I actually binged on that series, and I remember seeing the first 2 seasons within a day and a half. That's how much into it I was, binging like crazy, one episode after another. I got into it. Now, with this scene that you just saw right now, it was very stupid, very rude of how he was behaving. But the thing about it is, one, he felt inferior because he wasn't educated. He had that country attitude and stuff like that. And the rest of the family were educated. And of course he did, help them out. He was, if it weren't for him, with all the money that he actually managed to get, they wouldn't have or be fortunate enough. That's the thing. I understand that. But to have contempt towards black people that are educated, and then to say something like that, and if for those of you who didn't notice right away, when he says, "You stay right here in the house," and what does that tell you? He's calling him a house nigger, an Uncle Tom.
Sir, I apologize. I'll leave.
You stay right where you are, son. Right there. Inside the house. Pretty clear who the real nigga is.
And that was just wrong. That was very wrong for him to say that. It was very rude. So he felt inferior. He felt that he needed to be brash, very arrogant, and say, "You're not better than me," kind of attitude. But then he noticed how he was making his daughter very upset. And then when he took notice of it, he felt, I guess, heartbroken a little bit or something like that. So he didn't continue with his bantering or his criticizing or whatever you want to say it. So he excused himself from the table. Now, the educated people like that in that table, I actually admire people like that. And not to sound like an asshole, but even I've always admired people, whether they're black or Hispanic, that actually talk that way, very educated and stuff like that. The so-called whitewashed, which I can't stand people when they say that kind of word, because it's very extremely rude, insulting, and all that kind of thing like that. But I've always, I don't know, I just have this type of admiration. Like, it's an obligation to talk that way, because it's very, I think it's a good thing. However, I don't necessarily look down on the ones that talk uneducated. There's some black people that, when my dad used to work with tires, he had his own tire business for a while. We went to the north side of Milwaukee, and which was very ghetto, and it was mostly predominantly black in that area. And I made friends with people that are, they came from Mississippi, they came from Tennessee, and they came from poor areas, and they would have a speech impediment, like James Brown kind of speech impediment. And that's just how they are. And even though I got along with them, But I just didn't care for the way their mannerisms and the way they talked. It was really annoying. So I pretty much was able to grin and bear it, and I became friends with them, and they were cool with me, and I was cool with them. But then a lot of them were just, the way they lived. I mean, I know it's not their fault. I mean, even their parents. I mean, I even at one point I met one of them, one of their parents and they were straight up country, and they were very like, they had that look of they never accomplished a thing in their life. And of course, it reflected on their children, and how everybody was pretty much like that. It was very sad. A lot of them had drinking problems. They had problems with drugs, crack and all that, and all heroin and all stupid stuff like that. And I think a couple of them got fired because they didn't show up for work. But even though it's very sad, I mean, I don't know. It's just the way. It's just the way I feel about it. But at the same time, the ones that were more laid back ghetto, they weren't exactly educated, high level English educated, but they weren't at the same time uneducated Ebonics, speech impediment type people either. They were like in the middle, in the midline. They were like laid back ghetto. There was a fair amount of people like that, and I got along with them very easily. We talked about kung fu movies from the 70s, especially Bruce Lee and all this kind of stuff like that, and then how we actually, in the movie theaters, how we grew up and stuff like that, and then we shared stories and experiences. We would drink or this and that. It was good, and I had no problem with them. It was just that those unsavory type of moments from certain people, and then it was very sad, and I didn't exactly feel safe. And there was a couple of times where I was with the educated blacks and Hispanics, the ones that were considered sellouts, and there were some that were very stuck up. They looked down on certain people because they think they were better than them just because they were very educated, and then they saw themselves as being better and things like that. Of course, those I can't stand, obviously. But the ones that are more humble, I actually liked, but I just loved their mannerisms. And we would talk about, a lot of them were nerds. We would actually get into Dungeons and Dragons, which is an awesome game, by the way. And we would actually get along very easily. And not to sound like an asshole, but I actually feel safe around people like that. Them as well as the laid back ghetto type people, whether they're black or Hispanic, it doesn't really matter. Nobody is better than anyone, than each other or whatever. Nobody's better than the other. However, the attitude that a lot of people have, how some educated black or Hispanics would look down on the ones that aren't, and vice versa. Don't think you're better than me, or I am better than you, or you're a sellout because you're ashamed of where you came from, and all this kind of crap going back and forth, and this look of contempt and hate. I mean, it's just fucking stupid. It's just really fucking stupid. I don't know which one's worse. The ghetto type of country attitude of the uneducated people. Do they have the contempt towards the ones that are educated, or the ones that are educated to have contempt towards the ones that are country and uneducated? I don't know which one's worse. I don't know which one is considered to because it seems to me like the ones that are being usually singled out for ridicule being looked at as piece of shit people or assholes or whatever. Usually the finger is usually pointed at the ones that are educated, seeing them as, you know, they have no business talking that way. You're not white and stuff like that. All stupid shit. I mean, I noticed that happens a lot more often. But which one is worse? I don't know. Maybe they're both the same, in my opinion. So I just wanted to make that point very clear. And the tension is just getting so bad, and there's no need for that. Let me just put it that way. Well, anyways, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Questions or comments, you know what to do. And this is Dare to Speak, and to all of you, take care.